Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Can I Ask You a Question podcast. It's so good to be back with you. We are a community of curious people just looking to get better week after week. I have one ask of you. Would you rate and review this podcast? So helpful. Please do it. Don't put it off. One offer is I send out a free weekly newsletter called The Wise Letter, and it's designed to help you get healthy, wealthy, and wise. It's sent to your inbox every Thursday. I believe, and I'm working hard to make sure it's packed with value. At the same time, it's clear, short, sweet to just help you grow week after week. And with that, let's just jump into today's podcast. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the podcast again. Today, I'm here with Jakob Haymond, and we're just actually newer friends. I met him at a conference, and I've seen some of the work he's been doing, and I thought it'd just be great to have him here on the podcast and us to learn from him and talk with him. Here's a little bit of what I know about Jakob, and he can add more details in there and see if I made anything up. He's a husband. He's an entrepreneur, a creative, a musician. I've seen him playing the guitar, leading worship, singing. He's a marketer focused on helping churches reach people. Like I said, we officially met at a church conference where he shared some really practical and helpful insights for churches as they build creative teams. I could tell that someone who treats their creative work and marketing as a true craft. Even something interesting he talked about not scheduling your social posts, but actually like being organic with it and thoughtful with it and seeing what's going on. And it's very different than sometimes maybe I sometimes would feel about marketing, which is like, just get this thing done as fast as possible and get it off my case, which is why you don't want me as your marketer. You want Jakob. I think there's going to be something for everybody. A theme of the podcast is I'm really interested. I think we're as a community going to be interested in people that are multifaceted, who are good people, not perfect, but good people. Many times Christians, not always, but who love God, love their family, and are really passionate about a couple of different things. And Jake fits that bill from everything I could see. Because he's got like a lot going on and is passionate about a lot of stuff, which means I want to learn about a bunch of it. Thanks for being on again, man.
Yeah, thank you, Gino. I really appreciate the intro. I think you made me sound a lot a lot better than I feel like I am, but I'm super stoked to be here and just chat a little bit about life and business and church and God. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, sweet. First question's kind of an easy one, but I'm interested in it. What's one purchase that has really improved your daily life? It could be under 100. It could just be any amount. It could be a $10,000 bed, but just one purchase that's really improved your life. And then maybe in addition, like a subscription or a supplement or a membership, anything like that you've like, man, I paid the money for it and it's just been life-changing.
Yeah, well, you're going to probably be really disappointed in my answer of my favorite recent under $100 purchase. But I think for me, it's my Crocs.
Nice.
I'm not really a big spender when it comes to like anything new. I'm pretty utilitarian. I use things until they kind of wear the same thing over and over. I'm pretty old school when it comes to a lot of things. So I think about a year ago, I bought a pair of Crocs, and I think I wear them almost every single day to every event, to everywhere I go. So honestly, they've just been a great purchase, and I feel like I've gotten my money's worth out of them and will continue. So I know it's not groundbreaking.
No, it's good.
It's my favorite purchase right now.
With socks or without socks? It's kind of cold where you live sometimes.
Ooh, always with socks. I'm just not a without a sock kind of person.
Okay. I think I know what Crocs are.
Could never get on that board, except for when I'm like, in Hawaii or somewhere.
Yes.
Tropical. But no, I'm a socks with socks.
With socks. Cool. Okay, so Crocs with socks.
Yep.
The Crocs.
And then best subscription, man, that was a great question. I think it's kind of twofold. Like I'll give you one that I just personally love, and then I'll give you maybe a couple business ones. But Spotify for me has always been like one of my best subscriptions. Like I love listening to music. Probably listening to music everywhere I go, and I use that probably 8 hours a day. So I love my Spotify subscription, not Apple Music, Spotify. Um, and that has been by far one of my favorite subscriptions, and couldn't live without that one. I think business wise, I'll give you a couple that I just recently got because I feel like in my personal life, I don't do a lot of purchases, but business side, I do a lot of experimenting. And two of the best subscriptions I've gotten lately has been ClickUp. I think we all use kind of like app management, CRM software, all that stuff. ClickUp has been one of my favorite ones that I've ever used, and excited to dive into that a little bit more and use it for my business currently. And it's been a life changer for me. And I think the second one would be my accounting software, which is FreshBooks, which is super funny because I've been a QuickBooks person for my whole life. And I just really didn't like it, and I just switched over to FreshBooks, and it's changed my life. So as an entrepreneur, creative, business owner, FreshBooks has been a really, really great subscription that I've had.
Very cool. Just to follow up on the Spotify one, what do you what are you listening to?
Oh man, you're gonna find out like I'm a pretty boring person, so I apologize as we go through this. Not very groundbreaking things, but I listen to just country music and worship music. And then I have a few like instrumental, like deep focus playlists that I love. But like I'm, yeah, I guess you wouldn't see it from here, but I grew up in the country, grew up in a really small town, and I absolutely love country music. So you're gonna hear me listen to country music and worship music, pretty much 50-50 split, and probably the same 50 songs that was listening to when I was 15 years old. I'm probably still listening to today. So.
Well, okay, question for you. Do you know Sammy Kershaw?
I do know Sammy Kershaw. She's beautiful.
Okay, I think I know that one. I basically know one album, and that's not on that album. But I just started going back through his library. So what I've started to do is I did this with Avril Lavigne, which is funny, but I like Avril Lavigne. And I was like, okay, I basically know the Skater Boy album.
Yeah.
I went through all of her stuff and just listening when I had time doing dishes. Like let me see if there's any other songs I love. And I found like 5 or 6.
That's a good method.
With Sammy Kershaw is like, okay, there's these songs, I love them. My wife finally told me, yeah, like I like these songs. So I was like, you didn't like these for the last like 10 years. She's like, yeah, they finally, because you like them, they finally grew on me. So I found a new country Sammy Kershaw song. Me and my dad just love sad country music.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think half of my playlists are sad country music songs, and
yeah.
My wife gets pretty depressed on road trips when we have to listen to sad country music playlists. But that's what I grew up with. That's what I love. I think I'm just now understanding, like, when we used to make fun of our parents for listening to like old music or like songs from when they were kids. Like, I get that now, like, because that's all I want to listen to is the same songs I was listening to when I was growing up. So
same. Okay, so we're going up an elevator. We got 90 seconds. I gave my intro of you. How would you tell us about you? Tell us about your life a bit. The Jakob Haymond story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think everything that you said is pretty accurate. I'm a husband, business owner, worship leader, and I love doing everything, all the above. Currently, I would say that like I'm in a phase where I'm building businesses. I get to help a lot of creatives. I get to talk to a lot of creatives. I get to talk to a lot of churches as well, with their marketing, with their strategies, with their design. I own not only a creative agency, but I also own an outdoor lighting company, which I know is kind of random, but I get to help on the branding, marketing side of that as well. But we do like residential and commercial landscape lighting. So that's been a really cool, like, kind of side thing to be able to add to my portfolio and be involved in. in the service industry again, in the home improvement industry. And then, as you mentioned, I'm pretty heavily involved in my church, and I get to lead worship. Was a part of that church plant. I think it's about 5 years now, which I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit later. But yeah, I think I'm just kind of figuring out life through all of those things, and excited. Like, I'm just in an exciting part of my life. I'm in my 30s. Some of my businesses are taking off, and it's just been a really cool season to be in.
That's cool. You don't have to say if you don't want, but I'm 33. How old are you?
I'm 32.
32. Okay,
we're low 30s.
Low 30s. I think when we quickly connected at the conference, I actually think I did know that. So we're almost the same age. Yeah, 30s are different than I thought.
100%.
I think, I mean, in many ways, it feels a lot more like maybe what I thought my 20s would be. Like things,
Yeah.
I thought I knew enough. I thought I was ready to run these businesses. I thought I was ready I was just going to rock it. And now it's like, now I got.
I feel like things are taking, I feel like your 20s were all about like kind of figuring it out, and your 30s are like, I think you see a lot of fruit of what you committed to in your 20s. And it's been much better than I expected, but yeah, I think very different than I thought when I was like 15 or 16 on, when I'm 30, I'm going to be here. But no, I think so far my favorite decade. So
yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. It makes me think, it makes me kind of like, not embarrassed, but when I realized like just now I'm maybe getting ready to like really know what doing certain things might mean, to think like I thought I was ready to go at 20. And now I think I'm not. I don't think it's like actual hubris. I think legitimately by 30, if you haven't just really zigzagged in your life and just kind of, went wild for 20 years, after 10 years of kind of being an adult, you kind of know yourself a bit more.
Right. And I think you just learn, like, everybody's just kind of figuring it out as they get older. I think we have this picture when we're kids, like, that one day everything's just going to be like figured out, and this is your calling, and this is your career, and this is your, this is you now. And I just I've never felt like that. And so I think that's the funniest thing about getting older and even being in your 30s is just like, I think you just realize like, oh no, but my parents didn't have it figured out. Like all my, everybody I look up to really didn't have it figured out. We're all just kind of, we're continuing to figure it out as we get older.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, and I think I'm not ready to not be young. I don't know if you relate. Yeah. You're like, no, like I still want like to look good for my wife. I still want to be fit, relatively. It's like, whereas when you're younger, you're like, oh, you're like, your time's kind of over. You're ready to just kind of ride this thing out, and you're almost 40. Come on, whatever.
So funny. I totally agree with that.
It's really interesting. Okay, what's your morning routine like? Do you have one? Does it change all the time? Wake up, bedtime, coffee or tea guy, workout, eat a bunch of donuts, pray, not pray, unpray, whatever that would be. Don't unpray.
It is all of the above. I think if you had asked me a couple of years ago or a year ago, I would say I'm a very structured morning routine person. I think I've been on a couple other podcasts where I've like said like, hey, I cannot survive without my morning routine. But I think in this year, I've been a little bit more lax. So lately, it's felt like it's been all over the place. There's mornings where I wake up super early and I'm really productive. Mornings where I sleep in and I don't get anything done. There's mornings where, in my head, I've gotten my whole checklist. And there's other mornings where I don't. So yeah, lately it's felt like it's just everywhere. There's really not a ton of structure to it. I'm a big coffee guy, black, have to have my coffee in the morning. Also working out, I have a love-hate relationship with working out. So yeah. There's seasons, like right now I'm in a season where I just got back from a we had the conference that we attended, and had a couple of business trips, and I just completely fell off the workout train. I was working out pretty consistently before that. So, yeah, I need structure, but right now I think I'm focused on different things than what the structure was giving me. I'm just focused on being rested, focused on like working when I need to work and resting when I need to rest. So currently I don't have a morning routine, but I am a very structured person. And I will say this, like, I think, again, if you had asked me like a year ago, I would have been like, no, you have to have a morning routine. If you want to be successful, you have to have a morning routine. If you want to have a good day. And I really think my perspective has shifted a little bit from like methods change, but principles should never change. And so, like, yes, I have to have my coffee. I have to spend time with, Jesus and my devotions, and I have to work out and I have to do that, but I don't have to do it all at the beginning of the day in this season. If I'm late, if I spend time with God before bed, if I work out in the afternoon, I think the only thing that really can't go out of order for me is my coffee. That has to be at the beginning, or I can't function. But yeah, I think that's kind of been the season for me, is like, I know my principles and I know my values, but I'm not trying to fit them in the box that I had like established for myself. And really been trying to focus more on like, am I rested? Am I getting my work done? Am I spending time with my wife? Am I spending time with my friends? Am I, doing things that I love, instead of just being so, structured on this is what I have to get done.
I like that a lot. And I liked what you said, if I caught it right, is basically, okay, practices are going to change, but the principles don't.
Yeah. And I've been really, in the past, I've been so hard on myself. Like, again, I think if you listen to a couple other podcasts I've been on, I'm just preaching like, I cannot go. I used to wake up at 4 a.m. and I used to be like 4 or 5, I would work out. 5 to 6, I would, do my devotions, get ready. 6 to 7, I would read, and then, time for work. And in that season of my life, that's what I needed. In this season of my life, I feel like it shifted a little bit. In that I want to feel rested. I want to be able to enjoy my time with my friends and my family. Waking up at 4 a.m. every day, just for me personally, I couldn't sustain that with my lifestyle. And so that was a hard thing I've had to kind of like deal with, because I have felt off since my routine isn't as structured. But I'm kind of beginning to reprioritize my life a little bit.
Totally. Something I think you'll appreciate, this conversation my wife and I have been having, and even this language is, okay, here's what would be ideal. And then here's what we can actually accomplish today.
Yep. Yeah.
And
that's such a great way of putting it.
I think it's helpful to have both. And I think it's like the raw facts and then the gracious truth. It's like, okay, yeah, would I be better if I had done this and this? Yeah, like the articles, the blogs, my experience say, yes, I'd feel better. In reality, is that likely to happen as a human? No. So, okay, here is the ideal. And knowing, okay, I'll try to trend towards that, but we might be away from it for 6 months, or we might be away from it for 6 days, or any thoughts on that? Do you think is that a helpful framework as either like a creative or just a person? Or
I think that's a great framework. I think that like one of the things that I've struggled with is comparing myself to other people's like success strategy, and thinking that like just because they do it, and obviously like beyond the facts of like, yes, there's proven things of like, working out and blah, 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 morning routines, having structure. Like there is scientific evidence and proof that like, even for the like making your bed in the morning triggers your brain to think that you've done an accomplishment. Like there are things like that I'm not denying. I just think sometimes, especially in today's culture, like with everybody we follow on Instagram and people we look up to, and everybody's like routines being so readily available, we attach like these false expectations onto our life that are on other people's lives. And because we don't see the other 99% of everything, we just see like, oh, they're successful because, and I see them work out every day. And now I think, oh man, I got to work out every day to be successful, or I need to wake up at 4 a.m. every morning to be successful. And for me, I think like, again, what I mentioned earlier, like I've really gone back from like, okay, like, and I love how you put it, like, yeah, like our methods are always changing. Like it's just unfair to say like in every season, you know, it's going to be this easy to be able to do this, or it's going to be, you know, life happens, things happen, and we got to change and adapt. And so I think like having your principles stay the same, I think is the most important thing. Like not compromising on the things that, you know, the values in your life that you're placing on family and health and, you know, relationships and your work. But recognizing that, yeah, the methods and the seasons change, and that's okay. Um,
I think a theme of this conversation that I suspect is going to kind of play out, and it already is a little bit, is, you know, finding that path that's working for you, not beating yourself up, trying different things, and even kind of getting older. We're both in our 30s, so much to learn. And I know now, just in those, you know, whatever it is, 16 years, if you count, if I don't know, let's say if I was adult at 17 or 18, it's like 15, 16 years. You see people that you just think are the most amazing. You just think, I want to be them. I'm just going to do everything they do, and it will produce those results. Then you see them a few more years, and you follow them on social, or you're close enough to them, and you go, they were just a human. I didn't really like, that was what was shown. That was really cool. But oh, there actually was, if not a dark side, if not like a terrible secret, there was like, oh, the downside to you traveling that much and being successful was actually, you know, your kids kind of missed you, or you actually, that strength that we think is so cool as like a manly entrepreneur, it was actually kind of rude to your wife. Or and I've seen that with a pastor that I've templated my life after a lot. And that's great, and he's great, and there was no terrible ending to his story. But I have been around. You go around the block enough to go, you know what? It's still, there's still pros and cons to every kind of strategy.
yep, 100%.
Is that your experience too?
Yeah, I think that's a continued conversation, not just in business, but in marriage and in church. Is like you can't have one thing without the other, right? Like I and I don't believe like in having a balanced life. Like I think it's impossible to have a balanced life. I think it's more possible to have like rhythm in your life. And again, rhythm changes. Like we're both musicians, so we kind of understand like same thing with music is like it could be a slow song, it could be a fast song, you know, it can build up, it could like things change, and life is kind of like that. It's unpredictable. You're gonna have seasons where like you're working a lot, and you're gonna have seasons where you're not working at all. You're gonna have seasons where family demands a lot, and you're gonna have seasons where family doesn't demand a lot. And um, so for me, I think it's been more of like understanding my rhythm in life and finding that rhythm. Um, and again, for us that are Christians, like for me, it's like finding my rhythm with God in my life and how that affects my marriage and my business and everything. But I've been really like, yeah, like not a big fan of when people say like, oh, you just need to have a balanced life. I just think it's impossible like to have a perfectly balanced life. But I do think it's possible to have a good rhythm in your life and understand like me and my wife have this conversation a lot. So it's like, hey, there's seasons where I have to work more, and we're not going to spend as much time together. But when that season is over, we're going to spend more time together. And, you know, we can relax a little bit because that season is over. Or, you know, if you have kids, there's going to be seasons where like, hey, dad has to be away for work in the season because he's providing for us. But when we get home, like we're going to be intentional about spending more time together. Like, I think there's just this rhythm that you're trying to find, and it's not a perfect, like, the scales are going to align and everything's going to be perfect. I just don't think that's possible. So I think it's just learning how to live within that.
I agree with that. I think sometimes when people say balanced life, they mean kind of like a static balance, like this exact schedule on the
Right.
Excel sheet, and that's balance. Whereas real balance is very adaptive. It's
Yeah.
constantly adjusting to all of the external needs around you and internal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. Somehow I found it. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
He's, I think, the founder of Keller Williams, and
Okay.
he's a big real estate guy. I think is what he's the founder of. And but he talks about that with balance. He uses like a diagram, and there's like the center, and you veer far one way, and then you veer far the other way, and over time you keep crossing that middle line. And you have that balance. But it's exactly what you described. It's it's this constant. Okay, I'm going to go actually over correct this way a little bit because that's the need, and then back. Um, are there ever moments though where you realize if where like the red lights are going off, let's say on the personal relational side, where like if you know what, the business could need 2 more weeks of work, but the family can't take it. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh yeah. No, 100%. I think what I would add to what I just said is like being aware of the season that you're in. And I think where you experience burnout and where you experience that extreme, uh, either one way or another, is when you're not aware of your surroundings and you're not aware of the season that you're in.
Yeah.
And so I do think I felt that many times, and I've had to be corrected by my pastors, by my wife, by even just the consequences of the seasons where I've isolated myself, and my friends are like, "Hey, where have you been? Like, you missed out on this, or you weren't there for us in this season." Or so I think being aware of your circumstances in the season that you're in, and being able then to like know what your capacity is and know what your limit is. I think that's the I guess balancing part of finding a rhythm, is like know when to say no, know when to say yes, know when to take a break. And I think that's also even playing into our earlier conversation, is where I've really uh, moved from like super structured to just like, again, focusing on being rested, focusing on working when I need to work, focusing on not working when don't need to work. And that's really helped me like have a better gauge on when I'm getting close to, that season. Is like, if I'm not getting anything done that day, like instead of forcing myself to like be productive that day, or to like, if I don't have deadlines or whatever, it's like, okay, like instead of at the end of the day, I'm like mad at myself because I couldn't get anything done. It's just like, I just need to take a break and go do something that I enjoy, or spend some time with my wife, or go do something that's not work, and kind of recalibrate, realign, and then tomorrow I can jump in. But again, now I've catch up to do, so I'm going to work extra hard to fill in the gap that I lost. So yeah, I think being aware is very of your season and circumstances is the key to not hitting that extreme or hitting that burnout.
I like it. And so if I'll feed it back to see if I'm understanding it right for everybody, is okay when we're both advocating it. You don't have to have a static life where the exact routine, the exact thing, that's not inherently wrong, but probably you're going to need to have extremes, like moments where you're really focusing on business or work, moments of spiritual. But then the caveat to that is you need to be self-aware, because otherwise you might go too far one way or the other. Was that more or less
Yeah,
what you're saying?
I think, as well as just being like surrounded with people who have that best intention for you, including your wife and your friends, and the community and business people around you, like your mentors, your like whoever that is, your pastors in your life. I think submitting yourself to that, is a huge part of that. Is being accountable, to your time and your businesses and everything. And so I think putting placeholders in place, and people in place, and just learning how to be aware. And sometimes again, I don't think anything we've talked about either is inherently bad. Like I think it's knowing what your tendencies are, and then, like you said earlier, giving a lot of grace in seasons that are just different. Um, this year was a really hard year for us. We don't have to get into it, but like, yeah, we lost our daughter, and the same week that we lost our daughter, one of our best friends got cancer and passed away suddenly. Uh, so another set of our friends got divorced. It was just this like crazy season in our church and in our life, and it really just like shifted, like it rattled the foundations. And so I think even in that, like a season for me was like, I was just wanting to be hard on myself that I was like behind and that I wasn't working and that I didn't finish this project and that like, I couldn't wake up and have, at 4 a.m. and do my workout and do my everything. So I think just being flexible and giving yourself grace also in those seasons, but knowing, again, even in that season, it was like having my pastors and my wife and the people close to me, like keeping me on check. I was like, hey, it's okay to be, in this season to take a step back and just to like relax and focus on your family and focus on, your health and your mental health. And, so anyways, I didn't want to go that deep, but, on purpose. But I think, yeah, just talking to that with season, just being aware and having the right people around you, I think can help you avoid catastrophe on either side of that spectrum.
That's so good. We'll jump into some practical stuff, some craft, but I do appreciate you just even sharing that with us because it's the hope of this podcast is that people don't just see a guy like yourself that's starting to see I don't what level yet, but seeing that success and only see that and not realize like no, I'm like there's challenges. I'm gonna and because everyone has that, and I think so when they see it in us, when they see it, they go, man, I'm not the only person who's gonna have to balance things, who's gonna have to get the help, who's gonna have to need God and prioritize that personal stuff, or it's all kind of a joke,
Right. 100%.
Something you said, I think I heard it a couple times, and if not, this is definitely me. Like focus, getting your work done. Do you have any trouble like focusing and getting like, and it's kind of a trick question, but like the work that you like in your head think is the work, the stuff that should have got done. Do you have trouble with that, or are you kind of like if I put it on the list, I get it done, and it's not, it's just me.
Yeah. Yes and no. I'm talking in the context for those of you listening. I do a lot of creative work. So I build websites. I do a lot of graphic design, marketing strategy. So a lot of what I'm like paid to do is to think and to create and to strategize. And the other side of what I'm paid to do is to like execute and implement. And so one thing that I would, if we're just being vulnerable, I'm a procrastinator, like to the worst degree. Um, and so that's again, like if you want to talk about it scientifically or whatever, like there's pros and there's cons to that. And I've learned that it's not a weakness, it's a strength. And I've learned how to leverage that in a good way, but it also does play into, how I get my work done. So that I'm playing with that balance here, and I'll get back to that. The second balance is like, I think in the creative world, it's hard because we're paid to create. And there's days where you don't feel like creating, and there's days where you aren't inspired, and there's days where you aren't like, and it can't be forced. Like it's not like a task. Like I worked at a pizza restaurant growing up. It's not like, hey, I don't feel like making pizza. Like I still got to make the pizza. Like, and it's still going to turn out whether I'm like motivated to do that or not. It's still going to turn out to be a pizza. I put the toppings on and I put it in the oven, and it's still a pizza whether I'm motivated or not. But like I feel like a lot of times in the creative world, it's like I'm paid for my mind. I'm paid for my ideas. I'm paid for my creativity. And so there are some days where I don't feel like I'm inspired or creative or able to work. So it's kind of shifting gears and like like making sure that those days I'm very task oriented. It's like, okay, I can focus on like the mundane things that I have to do, like scheduling posts out, or you know, writing captions, or organizing files or something like that. And then making sure on the days that I am super inspired and creative that I'm just like focused over time. I'm getting all that stuff done. I hope this is making sense, but
Yeah.
I do have, yeah. So I would say yes and no. I feel like I do struggle with like getting things done, but I've learned how to sit over time, and just by doing it for so long, like I've learned how to prioritize and systemize my mind and my thinking and my days to like favor one or the other. And so, yeah, I think naturally there are weeks where I just feel like I'm behind and I can't catch up, and I don't feel like inspired, but there's also weeks where I feel like I'm really crushing it and have prioritized everything right, and pushing things out. So yes and no.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And I think for everyone's context, from the stuff I've seen and the reputation I've heard, Jakob's putting out like really high level stuff. So, and that's what I want. I wouldn't have probably asked the question to someone that was just starting out. It's like, okay, like, cool. You have struggles and your work's not very good yet. Like he's putting out really quality stuff from the stuff I've seen, from what I've heard, from the reputation. And so it's interesting to hear, okay, someone is doing it, you're getting it done. But still, okay, that's those challenges.
And right, you have deadlines, right? There's some unavoidable things. Like you have deadlines, there's, you know, but I've come, when it comes to the procrastination part, like there's just been seasons where I'm like, push, nothing. And then like the last week of my deadline, I get it all done, you know, like no problem. And I'm like, well, where was this the whole, you know, the whole month? You know, I needed that last month. But again, it's, I think, discovering and learning like your tendencies, strengths and weaknesses, learning what you excel at and learning what you're weak at will help you actually develop better time management and better skill set as you grow in your craft, because you're able to tell, like, you know, I know how long, when I bring on a project or client, I pretty much know how long that's going to take me to do. And so I can be a little bit more lax, you know, with my timeline, or I need to be a little bit more strict with my timeline. You know, I think that's something you kind of learn after doing it for a while, of how to play your strengths and your weaknesses to benefit and, you know, to finish that project.
Yeah, very cool. I feel like I've experienced at least two different type of, so for anyone listening that, you know, is interested in any kind of like thought work, and you got to put something out that's with your mind, anybody interested in whether it's, I feel like a lot of it's quite similar, film, music, graphic design, those creators, creative work, that kind of stuff. I think this conversation is just particularly relevant. And for anyone just a 30-year-old dude, I think this conversation is relevant. And for everyone else, please just listen. We'll find some relevant for you if we can. But in my experience, like with creatives, my wife and I've seen at least two, and my wife and I are totally different types. Mm. I am like the more stereotypical creative when it's like, that's kind of dysfunctional based on like the normal metrics of like, okay, your plan, your focus, the linear way you do things, the timeline you do things. And so I'm kind of like, I kind of wear that traditional creative badge. She is actually, so like in personality, I'm more creative. In reality, she's the opposite type of creative, which in personality doesn't she's like an administrator. But actually in output is very creative. Does graphic design, interior design, not at the level Jakob's doing it at, but shows up just a high level of graphic design, interior design. We'll do video editing, and she can knock out spoken words in the past. She can, so in the end, we both put out good, solid creative work. How we do it, our personalities coming up to it are totally different. Is that, have you observed that, and is there more, or does it kind of break down that way? Have you worked with the other creatives? You're like, they seem like they should be just an office cubicle, but they come like their design, their nuance is amazing. Like, what have you seen on that?
That's such a great point. Like, I love that thought because that's something I've been wrestling with over the last few years. Like, I don't consider myself a true creative, but I've learned to redefine what a creative is. Like, I've never been like in my head, a creative is like, oh, you doodled all the way through class growing up, and you're like an artist, and you can, you know, you all of your emotion comes out in your art or
Yep.
your whatever. That in my head, like that has been my definition of a creative almost my whole life is like an artist. And the funny thing is like I've never considered myself an artist. Like when I hear people like, oh, I'm just so frustrated, I went and played music, got it all out, or I went and drew or wrote. Like I'm not that way. I'm like if I'm frustrated, I need to go like fish or uh, watch a movie or just get my mind off of something. It's not like I'm losing myself in an art. I've always been, I think, more like you. I'm a very diligent, hardworking, organized, administrative like person that I've found these gifts like graphic design, web design, uh, guitar, like things that I do in my life. It's not because this is going to sound really weird. It's not like I'm passionate about them. I'm just good at them.
Yeah.
and which I know is weird, but like there's a point where I've redefined the word creative because being creative isn't just being an artist, it's being a problem solver. And that's what I feel like I've really grown into is like I am a creative in that sense. And I think you're right. Like it doesn't show up. I'm not a typical creative. I've worked with creatives way on the end of like they have no structure, but they're the most talented, amazing artists ever. And vice versa, like me. Like I feel like I feel like I fall a lot in between. Like I'm just as organized as I am creative in an artistic way. But there's other people, like you said, like they're so organized, structural, admin focused, office focused, like they can't operate in the art way. Um, and so, anyways, I feel like to your point, like I feel like there's so many different reflections of creativity, and it's understanding like which way you lean, and then going back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like getting projects done and everything. It's like understanding what type of creative you are, and then applying that to like I know when I have to go into this like dreaming, thinking, conceptualizing. I have to be in the right headspace and the right environment to make that happen at the level that I'm, expected to with my clients. It's not something that's easy for me to do that. Like I have to be in the right headspace, the right environment, the right everything. But the organizational system, all that side, that's super easy for me to do. I can do that with my eyes closed. So it's just kind of knowing where, again, going back, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, what your tendencies are, and then allowing those to work for you. But yeah, I've really been redefining what it means to be a creative, and I think a lot of people are. That's kind of what I'm seeing in the industry is like everyone's a creative, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But for me personally, it's been relieving because I've never considered myself a true creative.
Yeah. I think one of the cool implications of what we're talking about and like a practical for everybody, because my hope is you're listening to this one is if you're feeling, you're working, doing something creative, some project at Starbucks or on your laptop, which you can do a lot on your laptop, that you'll get encouraged to go to that next level, to break through something that's been keeping you down. And I think some of these really narrow preconceptions of this whole area get us in trouble. So someone that's maybe more on the stereotypical creative is, oh, I could never be administrative. I could never hit a deadline. No, like, okay, my assumption is you're probably not going to make much money because
Right.
it's not going to work with you. Or vice versa, you're really administrative and you're looking at someone and maybe you're administrative and so you felt like I don't even belong in the club. I'm an imposter. I'm not I'm too I'm too put together. I'm not late enough for this meeting to be even going to the club. I showed up on time and that was the wrong thing to do. And I think that's it. I mean, the way I would define creator, I hadn't thought of it prior to our conversation per se, is someone that creates. Like at the end of the day, okay, if you don't actually create anything, then you may be a artistic type, but you're not a creator. You didn't create anything. But if that doesn't mean your song has to win a Grammy, but did you finish the song?
Right.
Or
Yep.
are you finishing the song? Is the graphic design exported from Photoshop or Canva? Okay, cool. You created something. Now we can work with that. Now we can iterate. We can learn. We can get
Right.
feedback. We can. Um, and I think realizing it can be different and probably a spectrum. So a spectrum from like kind of
100%.
dysfunctional all the way to like A drive, very functional. And we can all be in the club. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and I think also in the context of like what your goal is, like you said, like I'm talking in the context of like I have paying clients that I have something to deliver that they're paying me for.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole nother conversation of like, I think there are creatives that shouldn't own businesses or run their own businesses. But I also think there's business owners who think they're creatives that shouldn't be creating. And so like those people should be hiring creatives and they should be focused on what they're good at is systemizing and building the processes and building the business. And look, you can be successful. Vice versa. Like I know creatives that are trying to run businesses that shouldn't be running businesses. That should hire somebody else or partner with somebody else that's really good at running businesses, and they should focus on what they're good at. And again, we're talking, at least for me, I'm talking in the context of paying clients for something that but I think in the whole spectrum of everything, yeah, like you said, like I don't think every graphic needs to be something that somebody pays for. Like, and I don't fall in that spectrum of creativity of like where I'm creating for myself and I'm creating for like my own fulfillment. I think that's the funny part for me is like that's not me. Like yet I'm still creative. Um, I consult a lot. That's creative, but I'm not, what you would typically think of a creative. So just, I'm talking in the context of like paid for, but I think, yeah, there's a big spectrum of what creativity is, what creative is. And this is one of the biggest things I love about the world we live in now is just like the ability that like, look, you can make, bean bags and with designs on them on Etsy and like everyone loves it and you make millions of dollars and you're famous or slime like so cool. Everybody's interpretation of that, so yeah.
Maybe a little context. Have are you have there been seasons in your work, and maybe you're there now? Have you reached 100%, like 100% of income from creative work, or has it always been like a separate job for yourself? Or
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey towards that. So in I went to school to be a worship pastor. So I have a degree in music. Thought that's what I was going to do with my life. And turned out like it just wasn't in God's plan for me to have a job in the church yet. So right out of college, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Didn't feel like I wanted a church job. Got hired as like a part-time uh, creative, had no creative skill, never opened Photoshop, never done anything. And I got hired at my church and at this internship for this Christian record label to like make design graphics for Facebook. Put text over photos to post on Facebook to like manage all this stuff. And I've never done any of that.
how many years ago was that, Jacob?
That was in like 2016, 2015.
Okay, so about 7, 8 years ago.
About 7 years ago. No idea what I was doing. Literally purchased Photoshop for the first time. I, you know, was experimenting, and that was my first job in the creative world, I guess, per se. And I just worked hard at it. I got good. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I copied a lot of things from other people and I just worked hard at it. And then fast forward 2018-ish, I was brought on for this startup that failed. And we lost our funding and it just didn't work out. And at that point I had like been taking on some clients on the side and like, again, just essentially being paid to like learn. And at that point I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Lost my job. We've just gotten married, me and my wife. And I'm like, okay, I felt God saying like, or actually I didn't feel God saying, I made a bet with God. I said, look, I think I have enough clients to do this on my own. If I can make as much as I made at my last job doing this by myself, freelancing, then I will do this for the rest of my life. And I ended up like doubling my income from my previous job that year freelancing. And from that moment, I mean, yeah, it's been 7-8 years. I've been doing this for 7-8 years full time. Have I made lots of money? No. Have I made like a living? Yes. And it's been really fulfilling, and I've been able to help a lot of people. And that's really more of my heart. Like money is money. Like money is going to come and go. There's going to be seasons, yeah, where we make a ton of money, and there's going to be seasons where I don't make a lot of money. But yeah, I can say wholeheartedly for the last 8 years, my 100% of my income has come from being self-employed and freelancing. And it was just something that I had to work hard at. And obviously I think there's a gift aspect to being good at something, but yeah, it was not my plan at all to jump into this.
Man, that's so cool for a lot of reasons. I consider myself, I put it on the podcast website, an entrepreneur, and we've created businesses. We launched products. I had a marketing company. We did that for a few years, had paying clients, created a whole budgeting system and a physical book, and created the product and shipped it and sold it. But I've never yet reached 100% income just from a business I created. So well done. To me, that's a personal milestone I want to do, and well done on that.
It means a lot. Yeah, and again, I wouldn't say I'm like, I'm not somebody who's like living the high life from
Yeah.
The fruits of my labor, but I think, yeah, I'm super proud, and I think that's a great reminder too, like to look back and see what you've accomplished. And I don't think there's a lot of people who can say like, I can solely live off of like, what I intended to just do on the side. So I think, yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Of course. And kind of why I wanted to find out and even make sure, because that's what I thought. I thought you had reached that milestone. That's kind of who's in my head as we're talking, is that a few different people, like I said, just this podcast is really for people that want to grow. Maybe you're a Christian, maybe you're not a Christian. You just want to grow. You're curious about life. And like I think the two of us are, and so I think people will enjoy it. But then there's that, I feel like there are so many people. And to me, in our town, we have some cool, nice coffee shops. Don't look down on us over there in the Portland area. We do actually have some really cool coffee shops. We do. But I hang out a lot at Starbucks, and I enjoy it. I like it. And I feel like I'll see a lot of people either at the cool coffee shop or at the Starbucks cool coffee shop. And they're trying to make a living in the creative arts, and so many, and it's hard. So I think, well, actually, let me say this. I don't know if it's hard. I haven't done it yet myself. Maybe it's not hard. Maybe you just have to know the right wisdom, but a lot of people fail to do it. And so I think I wanted them to learn from you, hear what's working, hear what's not working, get inspired. So on that point, what would you say to that guy or gal? They're like their mid-20s, maybe a little early, maybe a little younger, and they're wanting to make a living in this area. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say first of all, like it isn't for everybody, and I will say even to this day, like I think I go back and forth every couple months, like calling my friends and be like, okay, I need a job, like
Yeah.
because there's pros and cons to both. Like freelancing, we've gone months without a paycheck, and I've gone months making more money than I even knew what to do with. Um, and so I would first start off being like, it's not for everybody. And I think you figure that out by, again, I think playing into like comparison game. I think a lot of that is seeped into like freelancing world. Is I have a lot of people that come to me and like, I just want to freelance. And, you know, I've been putting myself out there and I've been doing all this work for free and I've been, you know, doing this and this and this, and they never get off the ground. And I think again, like that's something you just have to figure out for yourself. Like obviously, like us as Christians, I think there is something like God's blessing on certain businesses and certain people and things. Like I think that's unspoken for, but like when it comes to the reality, sometimes it's not for everybody. And I know plenty of freelancers that will never make that their full time income. And I know other people who are just like, you know, they don't have the structure and skill set to get there. And other people who do, they just don't have the clients. I'm always surprised talking to freelancers on like it's funny because I feel like I learned on my clients. Like I've always had a paying client. Has my work, I apologize to all my clients if they're listening, but like has my work always been that good? No. Like I got paid to learn on my journey. And I'm always surprised talking to a lot of people out of college, everything. They're like, oh, wow, like you had paid clients. Like all this is just portfolio work that I've been doing. I've never had a paid client. And so I've been really blessed in that way to like, I've been compensated almost my whole freelance life to learn and to better myself, where I know a lot of people, and I'm a self-taught creative. So I never went to school. I never went to college. I've never taken a course. Like I'm purely self-taught. But a couple things I would say. So first of all, I don't
This
think
is
it's for
good.
everybody. I don't think it's for everybody. And I think you have to know if that's like for you or not. The second thing I would say is like, it takes time. Like it took me 8 years. It probably took me 4 to 6 years to even get to a place where like it was a livable, you know, fully livable wage, you know. Um, we're not counting my wife's, you know, when my wife works and my wife's income through all those past years, but like to this point now, it's you know, my income can take care of both of us. But it takes time. It took me 4 years to get to a place where I felt like I'm, you know, 100% confident, like, you know, we can survive the rest of the year from this. So I would say take your time. The second thing I would say is like try everything. I remember when we first started, I was just picking up every project I could. I had no idea what I was good at, no idea what I wanted to do. I took on websites, I took on logos, I took on social media clients, I took on everything. And there were days where I would come home and I would Google like how to do this. Like I just signed somebody up and I have no idea how to do this. But what happened over time was I began to figure out what I'm really skilled at and what I'm not. And I think another benefit of today's age is like you can hire out anything. You can find people who do anything. And so that was something like if I didn't do everything, I feel like I would have been really stuck in doing one thing and trying to make that happen. And that's again for some people, but for me it was like I had to learn by doing everything, and that's kind of how I learned naturally, just by doing and falling and failing. Um, and I think the last thing I would say is just like get around people better than you. Uh, I was always asking questions and being around people that were 100 times more talented than me. And I think that when you hang around those people, it spurs you to be better. I think when you hang around people that don't have the same goals and passions and gifts as you, it really like deflates that. I remember in high school, like I played soccer my whole life. And then in high school, I tore my meniscus, and the next year I got put on the C team. And one of the last games, I got asked to play on the varsity team. I've been playing the C team my whole season. One of the last games I got to play varsity, and I sucked. And I was really good on the C team, but I sucked when I got to varsity because I just become complacent and I had become like, this is the level of play. when I got to playing on a higher playing field, I couldn't keep up. So I think it's the same thing oftentimes in business and creatives is like you're just inspired and motivated differently when you're hanging around people that are better than you,
Good.
because it gives you something to push up towards. So I would say those few things, and then work hard. Like I spent hundreds, if not thousands, of hours practicing, watching YouTube videos, doing things, and when I could have been watching movies or going out with friends or doing other things, I spent working. And again, talking about balance now, I've learned that was one thing I've learned. Like I think you can do it without, wasting your life. But I do think that there's people who waste their time on other things when they should be focusing on their craft, and they're not going to be successful because they're choosing to waste their time instead of invest that into getting better at what they do.
Okay, I like it. Let me give you a quick challenge. See if so putting you on the spot here. We can keep it kind of brief because I got more questions I want to ask you. But if somebody had like simple laptop, let's just say a Mac Air, had iPhone 11 or later, or like similar Android, and a couple $100, and they wanted to start making some money in 6 months, what would you point them to? And so they're relatively competent. They maybe messed around with things a little bit. What would, if you were like you got money on this bet basically in 6 months, Billy or Barbara are gonna have their first paid client, and that client's gonna be happy with their work. What would they do?
I would say first establish like what at least what direction you want to go in. And the funny thing, you mentioned that, like I did my first 3.5 years of work on a MacBook Air, a 2011 MacBook Air. That sounded like an airplane, and I had no idea how it even handled Photoshop. And that's what I started on, and that's what I did most of my work on. So
Yep.
It is doable. I think there's a lot of technology out there now, even more than 8 years ago, on that will help make your life easier. But I would, what I always encourage freelancers when they're first starting out is that they should try, if they're doing this on the side and their goal is to do this full time, your goal is to make your side hustle take over your main income like as soon as you can. And I wouldn't switch to full time until you can do that specifically. So
Yep.
I would say find your niche, figure out what you're good at, and then start hustling, DMing people, doing paid. I'm not an advocate of doing free work. I don't think any work should be free. I'm a big advocate of the price range of the quality of work. So if you haven't been doing this for 8 years, don't charge what somebody that has been doing this for 8 years charges. Charge a discounted fee and lower the expectations, but still work hard and produce what you can, and make sure that that's crystal clear on both sides, that like, hey, I'm not an expert at this, I'm just starting out, but you're going to get a great deal because I'm just starting out. So I would say like start hustling. I did so many web projects for like no money just so I could get it under my belt. I did so many graphic design projects just so I could get it under my belt. I think that there's like a lack of work ethic these days with people that blame it on like, oh, nobody wants to hire me, or nobody wants to like work with me, but they're not putting in the work to like reach out and get work done and build their portfolio and reach out. So I would say find your niche, work on your craft, and then start hustling. Like get out there, get a portfolio, start creating, and show people what you're capable of.
I like it. I think probably the biggest thing I took away from that for people listening is have the boldness, the confidence, and just make the decision to sooner than later go get paid work. Just do it at a rate that's lower. And I think that, man, if I'd listened to that advice more when I was doing my creative businesses, I think that would have been really helpful. Because I think you look and you see, okay, you Google it, how much for videography, how much for web design, and I just overthink it. But I think on the flip side, doing the free work, I'm sure that people have succeeded that have done that. I think a lot of people have, but I think it does change the dynamic both directions. I think it does set the right tone.
Exactly.
When there's some money on the game in there.
I've done free work. I'm not saying that like free work is bad. I'm saying when you're trying to build a business and you're trying to hone your craft, that like you're not just. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions with creative work is that like you don't do anything. Like you're fulfilling a service that somebody else doesn't have to do. It still takes time. It still takes money. It still takes thought to accomplish that. Even for graphic design, it's like, hey, you don't have to pay for the computer. You don't have to pay for the software. You don't have to pay for the font. You don't have to pay for, like there's all this stuff from the client's perspective that like
you should charge for.
Think about. And you haven't spent the last 8 years making this in 10 seconds or I wish I could do that, like 30 minutes. So I think there is things that like, whether you're just starting out or you've been doing this for a long time, like it's not just like, you're not taking just into consideration what your deliverable is. You're taking into consideration all of that. And so I think there's a lot of room for somebody who's just starting out to be like, look, you're going to get a really great deal, but I'm still doing a service for you. So it still costs something.
Yeah.
I think on both ends, then it ups that excellence level and you can, again, continue to drive that up and up and up as you get better and better and better. And, there's going to be a lot of clients that get really good deals and help you grow.
I love it. I want to gently, this sounds weird, squeeze as much wisdom out of you as possible. So let me take these answers at a little bit faster clip. I want to answer some questions. One would be advice for anybody that has a business. They're not going to do their own creative from a marketing perspective. What would be a couple best practices or ways to get the word out? And this would be both. So if we have hopefully there'll be some pastors listening to this, people with churches, because you're in that world, but also guys, maybe they have a construction business or a coffee shop or, and I know is there anything that kind of crosses over that they should be doing to get the word out and converting for their mission or product? Maybe like, what's like the 60-second answer on that?
I think here's what I'll tell, like, I guess marketing 101, it starts with knowing your audience. So it starts with knowing who you're trying to reach and you're trying to get in. So whether, you're an outdoor lighting company or whether you're, I'm a creative agency, like there's always a person who's an avatar, a client, an audience who is my ideal client. And that's the first problem that you need to solve. And the question that you need to answer is like, who is that person? The second question then is like, how do I solve that problem? Do I solve that by, installing outdoor lights for somebody? Do I solve that by like taking a burden off of them and taking on that service? And then third, practically, like you said, is how do I reach that person? So then it's taking, every avenue, social media, Google Ads, website, all the practicalities and getting with somebody who actually knows what they're doing, a creative professional or somebody in that industry, and putting together a strategy to reach those people. And then it should, in all theory, be converting because you've picked the right people, you've answered the problem, and then you've covered your bases on how to reach those people. So I don't know if that answered your question at all.
Yeah, no, that did. That
jump more into like practicalities of like what ad strategies you should be using or marketing strategies. But
I think that a
lot of people forget those. I think a lot of people forget those fundamentals. They just think, oh, if I post something on social media, I'm going to get clients. Or if I post something, like I'm going to get, like, there's a whole system and process behind why you should post or what you should do. I think a lot of people miss, and that's why, they're not reaching the people that they need or getting the clients that they need.
Really, really interesting. I'm just there's a couple ways I want to go with this, so that's why I'm pausing. Um, I guess. Okay. Selfishly, I'll ask you one for a past business we had as a kind of. We're not really doing it right now. We might try to relaunch it. Um, when we had our budgeting company, we tried two different businesses. Neither hit, and they didn't hit so much, like they so didn't sell that it's like you just think the odds of numbers they would have. So it could have been product, could have been price. We played around with that a little bit format. So we had an e-course sell on how to budget, and I think it was priced at $99 or something. So right within that like Financial Peace University kind of range. We also tried it at a higher premium price. We tried it higher to see if that would do, and then we had a physical monthly subscription of an actual journal that you would budget in. We did them separate at different times. And we did the Facebook ad thing. We started building the email list. People were reading the emails. People were signing on for the emails. So they were going to the website. They were hitting that landing page. But we had basically almost zero conversion. Well, I think we had zero conversion from anyone that didn't know us. What was like, is there immediately something you think what we might have, one of our challenges is we didn't have a huge amount of money. And so we never even got enough to build out like a face. So this is how specific, and we'll jump back to general. But we never even got enough to get to that truth, like for Facebook to look or Meta to look for people who look like people that bought our product. We never hit 25 or 50 conversions. So we just could never find it. We tried to pick our audience of like married couples who probably look like Christians based on the lookalikes, and they were clicking on it and they're watching the videos, but just like no conversion. Do you immediately see anything that we might have done wrong that could have maybe got some conversion?
I'll say a few things. Like obviously there are thousands of factors when it comes to something like that. I very rarely do I like money is great, but I was part of almost a $500,000 startup that failed as well. So I had all the money in the world, didn't even make a difference. Yeah. I will say a couple of things that I've learned from not just that experience, but over time. Like the funny thing is like I'm a terrible marketer for myself. Like I'm a great marketer for my clients, but for myself, I'm just like I think even before the podcast, I was like, I'm the least tech person in the world. Like I just don't care. Like I would rather just have all word of mouth. I don't like marketing myself. I'm trying to get better at that, which hopefully, if you follow me on social media, you're going to see that a little bit lately. But one of the things I've learned from that experience, from my personal experience, all of that is like free value is the number one currency these days. And a lot of the times we flopped like our expectations on like, oh, if we build something, they will come. And you could have the best product, you could have the best whatever, and you're still fighting like an industry average of a 2% conversion rate. Whereas if you're focused more on helping and building trust and giving value to people, then you're building an audience where then you can offer something to them and people will be willing to pay for it. And I think, again, without knowing too many details, like I don't see a red flag from just hearing your story. I think a lot of times too, these days it's timing and there's good times and bad times and that people launch businesses and there's just some people that get really lucky and some people that don't. I will say that oftentimes, so I'll say two things. I'll speak to that two things. I think one thing is focusing more on building an organic audience and giving value through that makes a very, very big difference monetarily. But here's the kicker to that is it takes time. And I think a lot of businesses and people give up way before they should. And I think if they had waited it out another 2 years, they would see success in that. But a lot of people give up on that because it's awful and it's grudgy and you're going through the mud and the weeds and you're giving things away for free. But I do think I've seen a lot of people in the success in the long run because they've put in the work and they're seeing the success. I think the same thing comes into social media. Is like something that I've lacked at, and I'm feeling the consequences of it. Is like I see creators saying the same thing that I coach and consult and preach to other people. I just wasn't the first person to say it on a recorded video on social media. And so guess what? They get the traffic and they get the glory for that, and they get the clients for that. And so that's something like even I've been working through right now, and that I'm trying to build a strategy for 2024 on like being forefront in that, even though that's just not my tendency, honestly, and not what I'm passionate about. But there's something to say is like, hey, if you want to, in this world and how the world is going, especially in the technology, you gotta be out there and you gotta push yourself and you gotta be giving away things and growing an audience that trusts you, and then you can sell them something monetary.
Man, I think there's a lot of gold there. That was helpful just to me. Hopefully everyone listening, you kind of try to take that, put it in with your business, think about it, apply it. Something I heard this successful business person and YouTuber, I'm just new into him, so I won't say his name. I don't know, you can't totally vet him or whatever. But he definitely has a mouth, but he's also awesome. Seems pretty awesome. He's not but he talked about right now he's building so he's already a successful business person, but he's building his social following, the trust, that tribe. And he says that's an appreciating asset that is appreciating tax free. And he's liquidated businesses. And so he said, I'll do my, what's that term they use? My capital event, or my, when I sell the business, there's a term for that. But basically I'll capitalize on that later, not in a negative or like a predatory way, but hey, yep. I'm building this thing that's could be worth 10 million, 100 million, $10, $50, whatever, but of trust and people that when I say buy something, eventually they will go buy it. And I'm building that up tax free. I'm actually writing off the costs to do this social, and eventually I can turn that on. Yep. I actually just found out, I was listening to an interview with Dave Ramsey by this guy, so I'm able to triangulate it. And Ramsey said, and I have a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey, that 40% of their business income comes from their referrals to their endorsed providers. Yep. So, and actually their like course was only like 15% or something. I was like, whoa, so much of your money is made just because people trust you and you say trust Bob down the street. And so that's not exactly what you said. So tell me if I hope you agree. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when I heard it and what inspired me is like.
I 100%, that's a great real life example of kind of what I was talking about, because again, I feel like we live in such a fast paced world, and where everybody's starting businesses, everybody like I joked the other day, like there used to be this joke like, oh, everybody has a podcast, right? Everybody's starting a podcast. Well, I feel like now everybody has merch. Like everybody's starting to make their own merch. Like, but the same concept is we live in a world where like things are created out of nowhere. People go viral out of nowhere and become millionaires overnight from a video, merch, shows, media, and we expect when we do something that everybody's going to rush to it and everybody's going to purchase it and everybody's going to implement it in their life. And it's just not true.
Yeah, not in my experience.
I think that we underestimate longevity and grit behind being there for a long time and drudging through that for a long time and having a presence for a long time and building trust for a long time. And so I just think there's a lot of businesses that give up before they should give up. And there's a lot of people that give up because they're not seeing results. And it's not, again, there's just too many factors to be oh, I didn't have a good product. And that's a factor. Like maybe you didn't have a good product, but like it doesn't seem like you didn't have a good product. So I feel like a lot of times people just give up too early.
Yep.
They don't stick it out, or it's just the wrong timing, and it will be the right timing in a little bit.
That's really helpful. What were you saying? Something else?
Oh, no.
And so I think, tell me if you agree with this, just kind of, I think if someone is a roofer or someone is doing something that's not even inherently creative in the way we might think of that, if they could start to build, to put out some content that people would start to trust them, like, hey, here's how to care for your roof, or here's what to look for if it's aging improperly. That's capitalizing tax-free. And then eventually you're top of mind, there's the trust, and 100%. You could be that long.
What I mentioned earlier, like in the old days, you used to build something and they would come. It's not like that anymore. Like, a lot of my older clientele struggle with the value piece because they feel like they're giving away everything. But like, look at what you engage with on social media. I follow accounts that are like, this is how much I charge for this project, and this is how much materials cost. And for some older people, that's like unheard of. Like, oh, they're going to know my markup, and they're going to know my like cost of goods, and they're going to know exactly how I make. But the reality in today's age is like, that's just what we care about. And it doesn't faze me in my decision to like hire somebody if I know how much the money they make. Like, I just want to see the quality of work and their integrity and how they do something. So I would agree with you. Like, it's just, no matter what industry you're in, it's about bringing value and putting content and building this. Like, I love that parallel and analogy of like what the guy was talking about. Like, you are building an asset that is tax-free because you're building an audience of people who trust you by just giving out free content, which is exactly why I'm, on a mission to reinvent myself and try to get myself in front of a camera, because I hate being in front of the camera. I'm a background guy, but it is it's the future. It's the future. And if you're not innovating and if you're not pouring time and money and resources in that, then, you're going to fall behind.
Something on that, maybe the worst kind of advice, the unsolicited advice for you, maybe it'd be helpful. Something I'm trying. So everyone watching, I'll at some point plan to put out a job description for an unpaid associate producer for the podcast. And what I realized is that it's really hard to market yourself. And if someone else says, hey, but if someone else tells me, hey, get on the camera and do this thing, then I don't feel fake. That's my plan anyways. That's what we realized with our marketing company. We realized, like, what, and I don't know if that's industry, if that's like taboo in the industry, but we really thought we probably should have hired another marketing company to market our marketing company.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like I've always struggled with, I don't know if I know the answer to that. Like I've just never been a forefront person. I'm the background guy. I'm so comfortable behind the camera. I'm so comfortable behind everything. And sometimes I do think it takes somebody else to point out the things that you're oblivious to, and to call out the good things in you. Like, hey, you do have something valuable to share. Why don't you record yourself and share it?
Yeah, and that's what I'm suggesting is maybe you need to hire a marketing company for your marketing company.
Yep. And I think that's great. I need people around me to tell me to do things that I'm just not willing to do, or it doesn't come easy to me. But also part of that on me is just fighting imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And like having the confidence to be able to put myself out there more. That's something that I face daily, that I know I should, like, I have all of the equipment. I have a camera downstairs. I have a video editing software on here. I have a microphone, and yet I still won't go do it because I feel like nobody wants to listen to what I have to say, or somebody else can say it better. So I do think you need people around you or a different company to push you to do that. And again, the investment piece is awesome because it helps keep you accountable for that. Maybe that's the driving force behind it. Is like, oh my gosh, I'm paying $1,500 a month for this. I better do
You better
it.
send them the content so they can cut it up and they can work on it. But we're really, really cool. And so once again, for that roofer out there, for that plumber out there, for that coffee shop guy out there, maybe do you do work for, not for business, for profit and not profit?
Yeah, and then I own a for-profit outdoor lighting company, so I have a lot of context in that as well. It's just like, look, you
Can
got
people hire you for their for-profit business, I guess is what I'm asking.
100%.
So maybe you reach out to Jake or you find another marketing company. And if you're having trouble marketing yourself, getting yourself out there, get some help, but get it out there, build the trust.
100%.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep jumping through. Appreciate you. I'm having a good time here.
Man, I love talking about this. I'm trying to organize my thoughts. I'm really spacey, so I apologize.
No, you're doing good.
Things come out all over the place.
No, it's good. It's not spacey. Let me see. Where do we want to go here? I think if you were sitting down to coffee with a young person today and you could only tell them about 3 habits in your life that have produced the most fruit, what would they be?
Man, it's a good question. I would have to say the first habit is just spending time with Jesus. I think one time we were sitting down with literally a billionaire, I think, and if not a millionaire, like a high millionaire. I remember him saying one thing that like stuck with me for till now, and it's that the only person that can do like create more time for you is Jesus. Like the only person that like gives you back your time when you spend it with him is Jesus. And I think that's so true, and I've seen that so evidently is like spending time with Jesus has never been a waste of my time. And I've always gotten more from that than not from it. And I've never regretted it, and I've never like felt like it was taking away from anything else in my life. So I think that would be the first thing I say is like, if you are a Christian, and if you aren't, like consider it. Like spend more time with God. That's completely changed my life, and it's been one habit that like I couldn't live without. I think the second habit is being generous. I've always had a really tough time with money. Um, and one thing that my pastors have taught me is, and they model this so well, is they're just the most generous people, not just with their time, but with their money. And I've really tried to implement that and make that a habit in my life is to be generous, even when I don't have a lot, when I do have a lot, being generous with my money, with my time, even with my advice and things. Like I hate charging people. It's part of life. But I want to be generous, and I take on certain projects so that I can give free work to other people. And that's always been a part of my business model is to always, give back and help, churches and nonprofits for free as well. So I would say spend time with Jesus, be generous. And the last thing I just would say, work hard. I think there's like a new trend of not working hard, and I'm all for being rested, and I'm all for being like relaxed and, treat yourself, all for that. But like when it's time to work hard, like work hard. I'd say those 3 habits have like shaped me and brought me to where I am today.
Super good. So that person I keep thinking about at the coffee shop, if they just prioritize their relationship with Jesus, acted with generosity in their giving and their time and their communications, but then when it's time to work, got down to work and worked hard. Yeah, I think they would definitely like the fruit that would come from that.
And I think those are 3 things you'll never regret. Like you never sit down and regret that you spent time with God, that you've been generous, or that you worked hard, whether it's for work or for, something that's personal. Like I don't think you ever regret any of those things. And so I think those are really important habits to have in your life.
That's so good. This is kind of a out of left field question, but you mentioned that you grew up in the country, a smaller town,
Hmm.
right? Now you live in the Portland area, correct? Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yep.
Um, I've always lived in kind of in a, in here in Medford area in Oregon. Always in kind of just a normal sized town. I love it, and it's got everything. But when I there's something about when I go to a big city and I see a 60-foot billboard promoting something filthy, something just a basketball player. That to me is like this iconic thing of it's a different world. It's a different culture is like that's how it feels. Maybe so I'm curious to me it feels like in your face in a way that in a smaller town where the politics kind of lean more the way I would naturally lean and even if everyone's not a follower of Jesus, a lot of them are. It's a different world. So having come from like what is your experience like coming from those different worlds? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I'll be really honest. Like, I'm still learning and figuring that out. I would say like I've lived down here now for almost 10 years, so it's home now. But it doesn't feel always like what I would expect home to feel like. Um, like I do, like my dream still one day is to have, a farm and a lot of land and be out. And I do feel more at home in a smaller town. Um, Even, political views aside and all that stuff. Like there's things in Portland area that I don't, it's just hard to live with and it's stressful and it's frustrating and um, it hasn't been easy. I remember the first time I came down here, and Portland's not even a big city. I was in, I got to go to New York for the first time a couple of years ago, and I remember just standing there and just being like, I don't know if you've ever been in New York, but I was
Just
blown
once.
away at how big New York was. I was just looking at the skyline, and I think I stood there for an hour. I was just in awe at just how big that is. And Portland doesn't feel that big, but what it did, that's how it felt when I moved from, I'm from a little town called Duval. I guess it's not so little anymore, but when we moved there, it didn't even have a stoplight, I think. And so, yeah, it was a tough, and it still is, if I'm being honest, it still is a tough place for me to feel like I want to live and put my roots down. But just speaking to Christians and to like um, people who believe in God, like one thing that's really changed my perspective is like I feel like I've been called to this city, whether that's for my business or the church that I'm in, or even bigger than that. And I don't feel like I can be somewhere like called to somewhere if I don't have a love for that place. And so, really, the last couple of years have been a big like I've been really working on my heart to like love the city that I feel like I'm called to and believe that I'm called to. And that's loving people unconditionally who don't have the same political views as me. And it's loving people unconditionally who don't live the same lifestyle as me. And um, again, like think when you boil it down to just politics or you boil it down to just a perspective of a city or you boil it even down to like, oh, this place is so much different than where I came from. I think you lose Jesus in a lot of that. And for me, it's the last few years have really been about like people and cultivating and praying for a heart for my city and to like love the city that I live in. So I'll be 100% transparent. It hasn't been easy. And there's oftentimes I still don't feel like this is home or this is where I want to raise my future kids or this is, it's been a big transition, but really, I've really been praying for, and God's been just showing me like, glimpses of his incredible love for this city. And I think it's important if you feel called to a city that you love that city.
Hmm, that's cool.
So
That's insightful. And just a follow-up question on that. Do you think that like an urban, if that's the right term, like a bigger city urban lifestyle, do you think in certain ways it's uniquely antagonistic to just being like a balanced, healthy human and or a follower of Jesus? Or would you say same diff, like big town, small town? I'll as an outsider, I kind of look at it and I think, man, seeing that billboard every day and like that much money and wealth and power flaunting a different worldview and the protests or and the signs that it would that it'd be harder that I would end up not being pulled a little bit more that direction without being without even realizing it and that I could but that's an outsider perspective. What do you think?
yeah, like I think I'm just trying to process this out loud too. Like I think each scenario and each part of my life has had its own unique, like, I guess, I don't know if we want to call them struggles, but like perspectives. And like, I don't think that one of them is worse than the other. Or I don't think I would choose to like go through one over the other. I think at the end of the day, like, there are things living in like a place like Portland that, yeah, it weighs on you, but not more than anything else like social media or knowing every tiny bit of information in the whole world has on you. Um, I would argue that like everybody in our generation now experiences like a pressure and a like,
That 60-foot billboard in some way.
yeah, like in every, no matter where you live, you're being pressured and pushed in a direction that we just didn't experience when we were kids. Like I remember being a kid and not knowing what went on anywhere. Even 9/11, like only finding out because I came home or because I think we were on a drill, but I didn't even have an idea of like what really happened until I got home. Like now imagine that every moment and every second of your life. Like, so I think, again, I'm just processing this out loud at the moment. Like, I feel like for me, I feel like that pressure is felt everywhere. Yes, like in a bigger city, you deal with that. I think on a more personal level, a little bit more than like, oh, I can just close my phone. Like, it's in every conversation. It's anything. But I also think like, again, going back to my first point, like if we value that only at face value, like what do we expect? Like, of course, it's going to be whatever. But if we go kind of push further and it becomes about people and it becomes about people's journeys and people's lives and people's hearts, like I think it's shifted it for me. Like I've completely changed my perspective over the last year. Now, practically speaking, I'm still learning how to live that out. But like, man, I just have such a big heart for the city that I'm in, even though I'm frustrated with things and things make me angry and things. But again, I would argue like whether you're in a small town or a large city, like I feel like we get that pressure every day from everything. And on the flip side, like being in a small town, I think there's like bubbles that we think that nothing in the world, you know, happens or that life is just easier. And
Or
anyways, I think
maybe
there's
everyone should think like us. Like about those other views, but you just think they're crazy or
exactly. And again, like practically speaking, I agree with you in a lot of like, I'm, I'm there. I'm the most, I don't want to bring politics into everything or whatever. Like definitely more conservative thinking. I'm definitely more, I'm from a small farm town. Like that's me. But when it comes to like being a Christian, especially being like on stage and being a worship leader and a pastor per se, I can't put that above like God's heart for people. And that's just changed my life. Uh, and I've met some incredible people and I'm really great friends with people who are polar opposite than me. and have huge, long, life relationship with people whose political views are different than me and whose perspectives are different than me and lifestyles are different than me. And I think sometimes we just major on the minors and minor on the majors. And I feel like, especially going back to like, if you're a pastor, if you're planning a church one day, or if you feel like you're called to somewhere, even for a career, like if you believe in God and like God brings you somewhere, like having a heart for your city, like pray for that, and cultivate that and work on that. Like, and it does feel like you're cultivating. Like, I feel like I'm tilling hard ground, but anyways, that's kind of where I'm at with that whole.
That's good. And it takes intentionality. Is one of the things you're saying, your intention to cultivating it.
Again, I'm just fleshing that out, so I apologize.
No, it's good. Kind of just something that came to mind was you were saying that, and just kind of get maybe your quick response on it, or see if you think there's if I'm off or not is more what I'm asking. We spent I spent quite a bit of time off for a week at a time over in Ireland, and just love the Irish people, love the church over there, and but a lot of them are like it's really like only one to maybe two generations of like Christian tradition. It's hundreds and hundreds of years of Catholic tradition, and the North is a Protestant tradition. But in the Republic of Ireland, where we were at, a lot of them they had a Catholic cultural background, but coming as a born again Christian, it's like the parents and their 40, 50, maybe 60, and their kids, and that's kind of it. It's not like 3, 4, 5. It's not like the Bible Belt generation after generation of this certain way of viewing things. And to me, it's kind of being there and then being in the States and being like in our church our church even movement of multi-generation, about 100 years of history. What I saw is kind of pros and cons. It seemed like there's something beautiful about this whole group of people that were just kind of growing up in their faith. And there was probably a little bit more grace and openness and rawness. And I think that, and it had its pros and its cons. And then there's something about like an established in churches where there's generations of faith. And so I kind of feel like sometimes hopefully I'm making sense here, trying to tie this whole thing in. There's another larger city and these pastors and these podcasters, and I'll hear them talk about situations, and I'll hear them they'll kind of come pretty hard at like just beautiful, basic, in religiously speaking, conservative Christianity, and kind of like, they're like, they should be way more open-minded, and then vice versa. Clearly, people that would come from like long traditions of faith sometimes might look at people that are right on the fringes and like, why don't you just come out and say that? Why aren't you being more clear on this? And I look at it and I feel like I'm probably wimping out and not saying exactly where I stand on it. Frankly, I should probably man up and be a little more clear. But I see on both. I'm like, I think you're both a little bit biased. I think your city, your background is making you think the other guy's more judgmental, when actually it's healthy that he's like taking for granted this Christian value. But it's also wise and healthy that you are being a little more thoughtful how you say it, because there's a lot of people in the coffee shop that don't agree with you. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, I think so. I've been part of a church plant in downtown Portland for the last 5 years, and we've probably gotten that comment a lot on addressing certain issues, more or less or whatever, everything in between. And I think what I would speak to that is like, every church and everyone has their unique struggles and audiences and people that they're, catering to. I do think there's, biblical right and wrongs, but I'm not going to get into that. But I think, again, we miss the people part of that and the journey part of that. And oftentimes we critique people's stories and journeys, again, based on what we see on social media and not based on the conversations that are happening in real life and the moments that are happening in real life. And that, as much as we want, life isn't black and white. and that there's journeys that people are on in with God and in the relationship with God that can't get summed up from a 30-second podcast clip or a 30-second sermon clip or uh, more in a city that they don't live in and that
Yep.
they're not a part of. And I think I've heard my pastor say that, like, I'm tired of churches in Texas and Oklahoma and the Bible Belt tell me how to do church in a city that they've never been in and that they're not living in and breathing in and a part of. And vice versa. Like, I would never tell somebody in the Bible Belt how to approach a certain situation, because it's two different worlds. And so I think there is a sensitivity to, like, and again, I don't think we're going to get into, like, I'm not a theology major, so I'm not going to get into there's biblical truths, but, like, I think oftentimes we forget people are in the middle of that. And so there are different cities and stories in those cities and a different way of reaching people. And I think if you're not compromising the Bible, then, you're not doing anything wrong in how you reach people. But I would be careful to criticize what you see on the outside without understanding, like, what goes on the background.
I like that. And I think for my own manning up, I'll tell you what I stand on that mainly, and hopefully in this podcast, and it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable for me even to say it, because, and probably at some point, if people listen, then I'll be corrected. I'll be educated. I'll realize I was right about some things, wrong about others. But it's hopefully kind of a safe place to, in a not like really hard, angry way, just say what I believe, say what our guests believe, and listen and ponder and get wiser. Two things. One is I think it'd be great if people in the more urban areas honored the Bible Belt and or smaller cities where there's just beautiful, basic life and Christianity and healthy living happening. And I think really being like, hey, if that was lost entirely, like in some ways the ideal, there are people living kind of the ideal, like, hey, grandma and grandpa, everyone's saved. They've been saved for 3 generations. They're just like that stability. Those churches that have, they're big and there's a lot of people and they're giving tens of millions of dollars for missions. Like, hey, we're glad that's there. And then I think on the flip side, people that maybe are in a safer spot and where they're not every day, could get fired, could get rejected, could get yelled at, could get protested if they misspeak, that they would recognize, hey, we're not on the cutting edge in this area, and respect and honor and give grace to the people that are on the very front line of certain social issues.
100%.
And then I would say this is probably the one where maybe it's not controversial at all, but it's just being true on my point. I do think the age of not answering direct questions is over. I do not believe it's helpful anymore. And I think there were obviously, I never get into the critique of pastors' conversation. That's not what I want this to be. That's not who I am. That's not like I'm just, let me work out my own salvation with fear and trembling. But I think we'll get into only slightly in the sense of, okay, what are our thoughts on culture? I think I'd seen pastors and seen people, and they just will not answer the direct question. And then I won't put you on the spot to even say if you agree or disagree unless you want to. But I'm just out and saying it. Hey, I think at this point there's a way to say every single biblical truth and say it, but still say I love you. And that I was actually on a flight. I think it was from San Fran home or somewhere, but it was a guy living in Portland. I think he was living in maybe Tigard, Beaverton area or something. And we had that conversation where I kind of told him in one situation, because I'm a Christian and everyone listening is a Christian. But I said, basically, hey, here's what I believe. And in light of that, if you did not follow Jesus, he's the only way to the Father, then yeah, you would go to hell. There would be consequences. Mm-hmm. I kind of told him, actually kind of hope I'm not right, in the sense of I don't want that I love my truth. I love the truth. I love Jesus, but I don't want that for you. Just as I don't want to, you to any bad news, right? But facts are facts. And I think there's a way to say, hey, it's not me, it's the Bible. I was stamped, and I think you should man up and back the Bible and stand behind it if you love Jesus. But I think just say, hey, here are the facts. Now we love you. Now let's talk about it. Let's give you time. Let's give you space. And I do think, well, once again, sometimes what I hear is, hey, that's happening. It's just not happening on social. And that's a tough one there is, okay, yeah, that's what I hear sometimes. Well, and privately, we're talking. Well, what are you saying? Because everywhere publicly to millions of people on TV, in some cases, you're like, for millions of people that watch this CNN or whatever interview, you would not answer the question. And I didn't know what to think on that for a very long time. And recently I've come to think, no, either don't answer at all and say, hey, I don't have enough time. You're gonna cut the clip too short, or answer it, but don't give a non-answer. That's just my 2 cents on that. Of course,
I 100% agree. I think authenticity is the key to reaching people on both ends. And I think like on both ends of the spectrum, there's walls that need to come down, and like Jesus that needs to get bigger than an opinion and perspectives. But I agree with you. I think truth is truth, and especially biblical truth is biblical truth, and it should be preached. I think the one thing that like I've personally just learned is like not everything is black and white, and people's journeys to God and with God. There's only so much that we can tell somebody. The rest, in my opinion, is up to the Holy Spirit. And I think that's where it differentiates in different cities and different callings. Like every church and every pastor has a different calling. Again, I'm not talking about compromising the truth or compromising biblical values. I'm talking about how it comes across and who you're called to reach. And at least for me, sometimes it's like there's conversations that are happening and nobody would ever know, from a pulpit. But I would agree with you. Like I think authenticity and transparency and being real is the key to like a lot of these issues. And again, continually laying your personal opinions down and your personal things and letting God just rise above is the key to like bridging a lot of those gaps that I feel like are just being taken over by opinions and not truth, on both ends of the spectrum. So.
Yeah, and I think keeping that, I think a great thing I wish I had more of, wish we all had more of, is that keep that presupposition. Hey, I could be wrong.
Yeah, right. And again, we're not talking about compromising biblical truth. We're talking about opinions and perspectives and ideology and even just society, like how we've been grown up. And so I feel like I've been blessed to be able to be in both worlds, kind of a gap. Like you would never tell by the way I dress now that I came from the country or
rock country music all the time.
Yeah, and so I think there's this beauty of like my world that I get to be a part of both. And but again, I'm not talking about compromising biblical truths. I think there's just a lot more to people's stories that I think we ignore sometimes. Where when we look in the Bible that Jesus taught biblical truth, but he met people where they were at, and changed their life. So
yeah, I think it's great. I think a big thing I'm taking away from you is on this part is, hey, humanize people, don't dehumanize them. How would you say it to their face? How would you say it in front of their spouse? How would you say it in front of their kid? How would you want it said to you? And to me, like kind of back to like, okay, working hard, being humble or being generous, loving Jesus. I don't know that the last time anyone's really regretted giving someone the second chance or like being respectful. I was just too respectful to them. That's not usually regret. Usually the opposite. Well, hey, I'll just ask the final questions, and I've loved talking with you and learning from you and bouncing off some maybe kooky ideas, maybe not. We'll find out. Final 2 questions. What are you most curious about right now? What is it that you're most curious about right now? Could be anything.
I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I think I'm somebody who's curious about everything. I'm a question asker and I'm a like realist, so I question everything. So like I'm always curious about everything, and I'm trying to find solutions to everything. So I don't think I could pinpoint like one thing right now that I'm like extremely curious on. I think I've always just asking questions. I'm really just curious on like where the world is going and where the church is going and like the digital age that we're in, how even what we just talked about, how humanity is survives through everything we're going through, how the church positions itself, how businesses are run. I mean, even in the world that we live in now, it's just changed. Like we were talking earlier, like millionaires are popping out that are 14 years old and because of TikTok, and old people can't even afford to live anymore, and even our age is in this middle of like, how do we afford houses and how do we like pay bills when inflation, and like I'm always just asking questions. So I feel like I can't pinpoint one thing that I'm like really really curious about. I'm always curious.
Yeah.
And critiquing everything and trying to like innovate and adapt and answer those questions for myself. So
Well, I think that's cool. Just staying curious. And okay, so on that final one, the podcast is called "Can I Ask You a Question?" That's probably my go-to favorite question. Um, what's your personal favorite question and why? Why does that work for you?
man, that's a really good question. I think one of my favorite questions lately has just been like, how are you? Like, again, I feel like in this world we've blown past intentionality, and I love when somebody sits down with me and just talks like with me about my life and the season I'm in this week, and takes the time to like relate with me on a real level, not something superficial or something, hey, I'm doing good. Like, I want to know how you're really doing, and I want to know, how I can help, and, how I can pray for you, and how I can actually make a difference in your life. Like, I think that's just been one of my favorite questions lately, not just for myself, not being asked that, but like that I get asked other people too, is just like being intentional and taking some more time to like get to somebody's level and understand where they're at, and yeah, not be superficial and quick.
I love it. How are you? Well, Jakob, man, it's great talking with you. All kinds of stuff. Appreciate you. And yeah, thanks for being on, everybody. Check Jakob out. We'll link to his different social profiles, and had a great conversation. I appreciate it, man.
And Gino, thanks so much for having me.
Man, so thankful for that conversation with Jakob. A lot of hard-earned wisdom from his life and experiences, also just a lot of humility, and something that I believe we can all take from it and begin to apply some of those lessons in our own life. So really grateful to have had Jakob on the show for all of us to learn from. You can learn more and follow Jakob, and I encourage that you do, on Instagram at Jakob Haymond. Also on Instagram at Church Kids Creative. That is his creative marketing agency for churches, but I believe he's also doing for other organizations as well. And then he has an outdoor lighting company at Champion Outdoor Lighting. We're going to have links in the show notes. Follow him on Instagram and keep up with all the cool things that he is doing. Just so thankful once again for him. Want to remind you to rate and review the show. If you've not done it yet and you want to support me, you want to support the show, help us grow, then right now, right after this, please rate and review the show. Also, if you want to just grow healthy, wealthy, and wise and keep up on this journey as a community of growing and improving week after week, then I send out a free weekly newsletter, The Wise Letter. You can go to thewiseletter.com and subscribe today to get that in your inbox every Thursday. And with that, thank you for joining me today, for being a part of this community, and I will see you on the next show. Have a great day.